let's go 5,000 subs. Maybe not. Hey guys, what is up? It's Biff, and you're in the Fearless Mods garage, where we are celebrating 5,000 of you who have subscribed to this channel over the years. And I figured it's high time, now that we're hitting a milestone, say thank you to you for all your loyalty. And I hope that a lot more of you will reach down there and like and subscribe, because we got some great things in store for this channel this coming year in 2025. I am going to have to sell this car and the Lexus so that I can go get my next project car. And if you remember watching the Stinger episodes in the very beginning when I got that thing, I said, especially the Stinger GTS was touted as being a cheap man's version of the Porsche Panamera. So in a way, this is kind of my stepping stone to continue learning my bodywork, refining my painting, and working my way up into the Porsche class and ultimately into a Porsche rebuild. What we're doing today is we're going back to one of our first vehicles that we rebuilt in the garage, and that's the 2017 Subaru WRX STi. And we rebuilt this thing, and there were a few things that were not quite perfect. And we're not gonna make them perfect, but we're gonna improve them to a point where we can get this thing ready to sell. So I'm sitting here working on this car, and you just heard that. Keys turned on. I've been checking things. I checked the starter. I'm able to crank the starter, but it's just cranking, not getting any gas. I've been in the back where I pulled out the lids to access these leads here and checked the fuel pump. Tried to shoot some voltage into them. I've even been down here pulling out the relays, that top one there, which is normally bottom facing when this is installed up in there. But that top one is the fuel relay. I checked it, it checks good. And nothing seems to be making any fuel pump sounds. While I'm cranking, she doesn't want to fire. So first thing I want to check is I got crank. I know my compression's still good because nothing changed. But I either don't have spark or don't have fuel. So right now I'm going down the fuel path, but that noise just started happening, and it sounded kind of intermittent, and then it just started buzzing constantly like that for about a minute before it just quit. But that key's been on for probably 10 minutes. We still can't even connect the diagnostic tool to it because it won't read it. It says that the dynamic vehicle control, DVC or whatever, is disabled. Hill assist is disabled, and everything's flashing and nothing is working. I'm gonna keep digging. Been chasing this thing, as you know, and there's just one thing that I keep coming back to, and that's the fact that I turn the key, nothing happens. The fuel pump's not priming. I find it odd that I can't connect to the OBD2 and get any codes, but I'm curious if I'm dealing with the immobilizer. So I've taken the keys apart. I've got myself a new battery to put in here into the remote, replacing this CR 1620 3-volt battery. And we will see if, when I do that, if it brings everything back to life and we're lucky, or if we got to keep digging. Crazy. Don't know what's up. That would have been fun anyway, because the fuel lines are still off and they are bone dry. I've been dealing with this starter wire right here, and it has just been problematic. It was really hard to get off, and once I got it off, you've seen me do the starter checks, and now putting it back on, it was so loose that I pinched it down a little. It's still looser than I like, but it's on there. You can see intercooler is out, fuse boxes are off. I've been doing diagnosis with the power probe as well as my voltmeter. Not to mention, I pulled off the entire fender here so that I could check any of my crash damage suspect wiring to see if it has begun corroding. I cleaned my battery terminal connectors, made sure the wires were all good here and that I got good signals and continuity everywhere. I've been checking all these fuses. I've been doing so much stuff. And I just now plugged that starter back in. And now I hear the fuel pumps priming. And it's starting. My first thing I want to do now with this revelation is just check DTCs. See if it will link to the bus now. And oh boy, yeah, we got all kinds of codes. So it is connected. Wow, if this thing just cured itself, I am going to be shocked. I'm not going to put the intercooler in just yet, because one thing I discovered when I pulled the intercooler off is this. I've got a broken link back here. Yep, got me an aluminum one here that I can put in. Because this thing is so not under any tension or anything like that, let me get some 14 millimeters here, it looks like, and see what we can do. If it goes in as easy as it came out, we should be all set. As this is polyurethane, we're going to apply a little bit of this suspension lube here around the edges of these, just so that we don't have some kind of weird squeaking going on. At least this will keep it where it has something in there to lubricate any movement that it might do. So there we go, big side going in the back. And we now have a good pitch mount in there instead of the 3-piece option. There you go. Now before I put that intercooler in, I want to tend to this connector, since that's my problem. It's still too loose. To protect that, give it one more shot before I put the intercooler on, just to make sure it's still working. Crazy that the fuel pumps don't prime if this doesn't make a good connection. All right, but we're working good. So everything's good here. Time to put the intercooler back in. Intercooler's on. It should fire and run just fine now. Let's go ahead and see what codes this says we may or may not have, and make sure everything's still working. Fuel pump's priming. There we go. All right, we might still have some error codes here, so let's shut it off and check it. Let's erase these guys. Fuel, cat, evap, air, O2 sensor, heater, and EGR. So it's all emission related DTCs. Not sure what's going on there. Let's try and erase again. Wonder if I still have something unhooked that I have not hooked back up. Guess I could stash those back up in there and make sure I didn't unplug anything, as well as close this guy all up, but I don't think there's anything else unplugged. As far as the issue that we were having with the no start, we did get it going again. I can hear the pump priming, so I know it's still good to go. But what I have is, and you can see them here, even with it not started, I have the traction control, I've got the ABS, and I've got the hill assist that aren't going out. I'll get to that and intersperse that in here as we go ahead and fix that. But that should be about it. I don't know if we'll get it back on the autocross track early in the spring, or if this will be sold before then so that I can pick up the Panamera. But I'm excited to get this done and move on to that step, even though I'll be very sad to see this car go. Okay, so let me take you for a walk around the car and show you some of the things that I want to kind of work on as we fix this thing back up. We've already got it jacked up and some of the parts taken off because we've done some work on it. First thing is going to be, we didn't have many paint reactions, but we did have one, and that was right here in the front bumper, some bubbling right here. So I just saw that today and was reminded about that. We'll probably take care of that if all goes well on the fender. Let me show you the fender first, because as you can see, I've removed it. I've done some touch up with some rust treatment and some paint on some of the welds that we did, the spot welds that were kind of rusting on there, to protect them again under the fender. But what I want to show you is this fender where from the very beginning when I was polishing the rough clear coat, I burned through on this edge. And so that's always had the red showing through underneath, which I need to cover. But also a couple years later, I ended up with this paint chip off that ended up obviously starting to rust. So we're gonna need to clean that up, get rid of the rust. My plan is to try to airbrush spot touch these up. So we'll see how that goes. If it goes well here where we absolutely have to do it, the second thing that has always been around that pretty much needs to be fixed in the absolutely column is where when I was buffing it, some of the paint released on the edge of this wing. So it's always been like this. We have some things that occurred during assembly when this thing was sprung but didn't have the wing on or didn't have the right springs, whatever. It flopped up and hit the quarter panel here in a couple areas. So we have a couple chips here that we can tend to that stayed above the metal because there's no rust, it's just primer. But and then also scuffed up the surface here a little bit with some red showing through. So there's a couple little areas there that I can touch up if this goes well. Side skirt had one of these tabs that was broken and it just wasn't connected in there. I think some of the connectors up front were pulling out, so that was always hanging off. I took it off so we could investigate it, but you also got to take it off to be able to remove that fender. On the fender, I forgot to show you, there's one little scuff area right here in the paint where I think somebody's handlebar on a bicycle got against me and kind of gave it a little scratch and then into the plastic. There are several rock chips up here on the hood if the touch-up goes well. I just don't want it to look polka dotted, and if that isn't looking good, that may not be what I should do. There are some areas in here around the scoop that have always kind of showed through red. Probably assembled it too quick before I got it completely dried. Who knows? But there are a couple little red areas that show through there and don't look the greatest, plus a couple little red rock chips where we have revealed the paint underneath. So again, don't know what I'm going to do with that. I don't have a whole lot of this lapis blue paint remaining. I do have a little bit in the bottom of a can, so I'm going to have to be very judicious with it and kind of go through everything in the order that I've stated so I get the things done that I need to get done. And then this door has never quite shut right. The reason I've just never done it is because I'm lazy and because that requires removing the fender to get to the bolts, and to remove the fender you got to remove the side skirt. So it's side skirt, fender, get to the bolts, adjust it, and then get this thing where it stops doing that. So starting off here, these are going to be the spots that I hit first. This one is the #1 priority on the entire car, and for that one I'm going to use some 400 grit because I want to make sure I can get that rust removed, and I want to be very controlled here and not go too far into the paint, but enough where I can control that rust. Hopefully it's not traveling too far back on this anywhere. I will use some 800 on this here just to scuff up where my airbrush is going to be applying the blue and then the clear so that it has something to stick to. The rust was only surface rust, so that's really good. I do have the paint. What I can see is obviously my blue paint. I've got the red paint for the original color of the fender. I've got the primer underneath it, or the sealer. It might be sealer, and then it looks like there's a layer of a dark primer under there. I don't believe that's rust. I'm going to look at it really closely to make sure that I can confirm that that's not a dark rust line around there. But it looks like we're pretty good to go there and pretty localized in our sanding. So it looks all good behind there. There's no rust behind there. Good metal. My wheel made some contact, so I might scuff that just a little bit as well. All right, so now that we got that good, let's look at a little bit of 800 here just to scuff around everywhere we want to hit. Probably just going to run these two together right there. I probably buffed it all pretty thin. So it was very thin right there where we were buffing. It looks good now. Good and red, I guess, is the only thing I can say about that. But this is going to be the first area that we try to airbrush, and obviously it's going to look like what it looks like. We have no option. It's got to be successful. I'm using this Harbor Freight Black Widow setup here. I did do some trial runs with it on a practice sheet where I just had a grid, got some stuff on it here recently, ran some lines, did some circles, coated the circles, different sized dots and spray patterns. So it works a lot like a regular paint gun on a car, just on a much smaller scale. You have just the first pull of the trigger or the push of this button, which is air, and then as you bring it back, it lets the paint come in varying degrees. So just like that. So anyway, we'll get this, see if we can get some of our blue paint resurrected from 6 years ago. I got this taped off and covered here because we definitely need to get some etching primer on the bare metal, and the bare metal for this is here where the wheel rub was, as well as obviously right here. So we'll get that taken care of. I don't have a whole lot of this. Like I said, this is my lapis blue from the original paint job, K3X lapis blue for the Subaru. Okay, so while this is drying here, I'm going to open this up and hope and pray that we've got what we need in here. There is nothing sludgy in the bottom of this, so I think we're good to go. I don't have any original reducer, so I went to Sherwin-Williams Paints and they cross-checked it and said reducer's reducer. So I'm going to use the Sunfire reducer here to go ahead and make my 1-to-1 mixes on this. All right, we'll just hit that with a little bit of 600. Do not want to get that edge. Here we go, primed and ready to paint. This stuff's good for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours in the cup. It's actually good for 8 hours, but that would be plenty of time for us to get our coat on here. And we're set to 30 PSI on the pressure gauge. So I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing a little bit of this up, and then we'll see, do just a little bit of practice and then see what we can do here on this panel. Man, that is looking good. The color match there, when that is done, I think is going to be obviously good because it's the same color. As far as our red stripe, it's gone, and our rust section is gone. And we did it with just that little detailing air gun, so airbrush. So let's let this coat dry, flash for about 5 minutes, and then we'll get another coat on there. And then we'll let that one set, and we'll be ready to try some clear coat and see how this thing works as a full package. With the metallics in here, that's the reason I went with the 0.5 tip, so I can allow a little bit more of those to get through. So I'm gonna let this one flash and most likely call that good. I think we'll let that one go for about 30 minutes, and then we can go ahead and put some clear coat on there. Looking pretty good. All right, we'll call that a good first coat. Speaking of clear coat, I do want to go ahead and move on to that and make sure that my clear coat's going to go down acceptably before I continue just sanding everywhere and putting down base coat. If I have any kind of a situation with my clear coat, I don't want to find that out after I've already done these spots all over the car. These ones needed to be done, so they'll look better than they did before regardless. But I definitely want to make sure I'm good to go before we move on. All right, here we go with clear coat. Found a new clean lid that does not appear to have any holes in it. 4-to-1, that's gonna make it hard. Because if I put 2 of these in and half of one of those, I should be good. All right, I think we're looking pretty good there. And I tried to put it down wet enough where it would level itself and not just be misted. Let's go over to the rear spoiler and see what we can do there. No paint reactions happening, so that's good. Okay, we'll let that one set, and then we'll go get a second coat on everything. Hopefully this all buffs out and looks good, because what I'm seeing right here sure does. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this stuff up and let this set up, and we'll come back and look at it tomorrow and see how it turned out. Okay, next day, back in here looking at stuff, and this turned out really good. Clear coat looks great. I need to clean all this up, and I'm probably gonna try to polish it out a little bit by hand first to see how good it gets before we go to any kind of a buffing wheel. Same thing, feels and looks great. Dustiness out here that needs to be polished. We might end up taking one of our 3000 pad and just kind of like, you know, getting some of that, a little bit of wet sand. Let me just hit it with a little bit of compound. We're gonna call that good. I don't know if you're even gonna be able to see this. I'm gonna try to put you right on my eyesight line so you can see it. You can see just a little bit of a line through here where my coat came off of here, about through there. But the color match and the metallics and the clear coat are perfect. The backside looks good. The front looks good. Or the side, I should say. And so I'm just gonna get that hazing on that back edge just a little bit, and then this will be done. Now that we know that this is not only slightly successful, it's very successful, let's go ahead and tend to this fender here and get it cleaned up and buffed. Oh, shnikes, that's beautiful. Looks really good with one exception. My paint job with the airbrush is better than it was with a spray gun the first time I did this. So we got just a little bit of red starting to show through right here. That was not where our problem was before, but the mist of the previous coat was so light that just the polishing and stuff is starting to take it down through. So I'll probably hit that spot again, much more localized. The blend line is up in here at the arch, and you can't see it. Not to mention that our red stripe right here that was running really long through here is completely gone, as is our paint chip somewhere in here that is now covered and body colored. This thing looks fantastic. Pretty good rock chip right here. And then the scratch right here that I was saying somebody got with a bicycle. So I'll probably tend to that. That is proof of concept. This is working very well, and it is turning out just flawless. I mean, it looks fantastic. I'm pretty confident now that if I do those, we can make it not look like a Dalmatian when we're done, and this will actually be a good finished product. I know where all the flaws are. They bug the hell out of you until you can actually fix them, and to fix them this well is very encouraging. I'm gonna take this forward to my wife's Highlander and fix a little gouge I put in hers as well. That's just great news. All right, let's keep working. We got everything kind of taped to mark not only where we want to do some repairs, but also to prevent any overspray. This back here is taped off so we can hit these And this guy for the scratch door handle taped off so we can go after that nick. Couple spots marked on the hood. I still got to put some paper up front here. And so I can mark these and then just kind of scuff these and hit them locally. These rock chips were taped off up front. So if they're deep, we'll hit them with 400, like the big nicks and stuff like that. If they're not deep, we'll hit them with some 800, just kind of scuff the area around there so that it will receive the paint and the clear coat just kind of in a little bit of a localized area. Okay, so we've got everything wiped down with wax and grease remover and buffed any streaks off of it. Everything is prepped with 800 sandpaper, just a little bit wider to give us a little area for the clear coat to stick to. So we have our areas all prepped. There are a couple, as you've probably seen here, that have a little bit of bare plastic on them. They're primarily the bumper, but also this spot right here. So I definitely want to hit just a little bit of adhesion promoter on there, and we will see how that does right there. All the chips and stuff look like they still have sealer or primer underneath them. So for the most part, I think we're good for not needing to do any primer. Yeah, even this guy right here, I thought that was metal, but that's down to the sealer. So we're good to go. Here we go. The clear coat is mixed 4-to-1. 2 capfuls of clear coat and half a capful of reducer, or I'm sorry, because I use reducer. I'm going to pour this out and make hardener. I have mixed my cup of clear coat here, 4-to-1, 2 capfuls of clear coat, and 1/2 capful of hardener this time. So I'm mixing it up, and we are getting ready to put down some clear coat. What I have to do now is make sure that my clear coat goes beyond that sanded area. I don't have to, but I want to, just a little bit. And then when we go to polish it, just as we saw on this one, we will give that the 3000 grit just to kind of get the edges feathered down for any clear coat that went too far. And then as we buff it, it'll come in and shrink into the area that we want the repair to focus on. Those are looking good for a first coat. And I put it on wet, so it's not looking bad. It gets a little cloudy in here just using that little guy. I'm gonna lie to you, we got clear coat floating around in here. I'm breathing it, but it's not horrible. It's just a little bit. I say it's not horrible. It's not good for me. Don't do that at home. You can see it floating off of there. So I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and step out of here, let this stuff settle a little bit. Obviously we have overspray around here, the clear coat. The overspray sprays a lot with a lot more mist, just like it does under the spray gun. But that's what we're gonna buff out and make look pretty. I want you to notice, if you can see it, that there is still a low spot right there where the chip was. And I just want to point out, I did not intend to sand these out and do body work whatsoever. I'm just trying to make it look a little bit better. When I sanded that, I create a smoothness to it, but it obviously is a little lower because it's lower than the paint all around it, right? And automotive paint with reducer, the paint itself is really thin, and the reducer together doesn't make it any thicker. It's really thin. And so it doesn't fill that in like you might expect. That's what body filler is for. And that's not what our objective was here. So it will still show the contour of where I sanded those out, and that's fine. You might see some little spots like that around. Some of the other chips might just look like chips that have been painted over, and that's fine. But when we're done, it'll all be blue, the same color, nice and shiny, just the way it should look. Overall, a much better improvement over the bubbling paint that we had from the previous paint reaction. That, and around the edges of our hood scoop, we're not going to be seeing any red in there. That looks really good. Next day, and it's time to buff this stuff all up and get rid of the extra overspray on here. Not really wet sanding because we're only using 3000, but technically it is, but we're just kind of getting that mist of overspray off around the area so that we can buff it up then with the compound stage 2 and then the stage 3 correcting glaze. So a lot of polishing to go. I'm going to put you on some time warp and we're just going to knock it out. Okay, it has been, let's call it 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours of sanding and buffing. But my gosh, I gotta tell you, this is incredible. Incredible how good the airbrushing with the base coat and the clear coat turned out. Wow, the blend is beautiful. Where my scratch was right here looks beautiful. This was one of the only pieces that we didn't have to do any sanding afterwards because we pretty much just clear coated it and left it, and that clear coat just went on so beautifully. It's like if I could paint the entire car with the airbrush, my clear coat would have been so much better than it was back in 2018 whenever I painted this. But the hood here as well, all of our spots, and I went ahead and did a full buff and polish of this entire hood because it has so much sap on it. But our colors around the edges, our bumper where we had the bubbling in there is now no more. We wanted to make sure these edges were going to be blue so they wouldn't show through while it's sitting down in there, and took care of some rock chips while we were at it. This thing still has a lot of rock chips. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of red polka dots on here, pinholes, and that was not the purpose of doing this. It's also got the same clear coat that I put on it, like I said, in 2018 and or 19. I guess it was 2019. Which is not the greatest. The clear coat looks better in the spot that I cleared it than it does outside of it. There's a faint haze of a line around where the two meet, and that's just because there is base and then clear, and it's never going to be a perfect seamless transition. That is it for the painting. We will go ahead and start putting things back together, and then on to taking off the rocker panel on the right side so that we can adjust that passenger door, get it set right. But we're getting real close to completing this in honor of all of you that have been around since FearlessMods was established in 2017. 5,000 of you now, at least, that are subscribed. There's a lot of you that aren't. Please go ahead and reach down there and become a subscriber. One of the cool people. Got the side skirt off and the fender off so that we could get to the bolts here and adjust this door. This is why I have never done this in all the years of owning this. You can hear it hitting, and I want to fix that because it's been that way for far too long. It's just a lot of work to get in here to do that, but we're ready to do it, so let's get this thing adjusted. Why did I wait so many years? No hitting, just clicking. Why did I wait so many years to fix that? I don't know. Epitome of laziness there. Don't do like I do. Fix your unadjusted door or your misadjusted door so you don't have to live with it. Once everything's good and set, we can put it back together, start cleaning it up, and pretty much be job complete. One thing I want to show you here is these little clips. When you pull them out, even though you pop them, a lot of times these tabs break off. These did really well here for underneath the side skirt, but because they've been engaged for so long and spread out, the plastic kind of hardens like that. And when they're flared out like this, sometimes it's hard to get them started in the proper size hole. You got to kind of get all these to push in as you go into the hole. And the dry old plastic doesn't always do that. So on the couple that were fighting me, I just hit them with some white lithium grease here to lube them up a little bit. And then as I start to put them in there, I'll twist them a little bit to try to work them up into that hole until it drops in. And then I can pop this in and be good to go. Okay, so we got a couple things going on here. First, as you saw, we got the right side all done. I then, before I can put the left side back together, wanted to make sure that we could clear all those codes that we had. Not just the codes, but the lights for the vehicle dynamic control, the hill start assist, and the ABS. I was not having any luck with that, trying to look at the service manuals and find the fault trees. So I came to something that said if it's been sitting for a while in cold weather, it could take just driving it a little bit. So went ahead and backed it out of the garage, and literally before I even made it to the stop sign, they all cleared. So that's good to go. I went ahead and did take it down the highway for a little test drive and back to go ahead and scrub some of the rust off of the front brakes. Now that that's done, something that's kind of been bugging me here, aside from all the leaves and everything that I just vacuumed out of the windshield wiper holes, is this intercooler and how smashed all the vanes are. Once I make it across all of these, we will be ready to go ahead and assemble the left side, the driver's side, get that all put back together, and take it for a wash before we bring it back and detail the whole thing. So the thing to notice with this, just using this simple Harbor Freight tool, is I got the one that's bent at almost 90 degrees, and it's thicker here and obviously tapers to a point. And as you go into the wide part of this and slide across, you kind of slide this up and out so that you kind of keep a little bit of the V taper there, because obviously this end isn't as wide as this end of the slot. So I just slide it over and up as I'm going back and forth to help try to keep it as V'd as possible while straightening the vanes. And it's going to increase that airflow through here, which will increase the efficiency of our intercooler and therefore our turbos and our resulting power coming out of this car. And that is what it looks like when you put your intercooler back to factory spec. And I tell you what, I know we've got horsepower gains as a result of this, not to mention how much better it looks. There is some cracking right here where I rolled these rear fenders. Only on this side, the other side's fine, but I do want to go ahead and cover it up with some blue paint so that doesn't chip and rust. Well, you did it. Look at that. 5,000 of you. And thank you to Zach, my 5,000th subscriber. Really appreciate you. And your Celica hood. That's perfect timing because we have got this thing. Oh my gosh. This stuff here, I can't talk highly enough about it. This 3D correction glaze. It has brought out this blue better than it looked when it was freshly painted. I swear by this stuff. And they're not a sponsor. I just am really impressed with how good it looks. So we buffed the entire thing, polished it out, and now we just got a couple of finishing touches and we'll get this video out to you, all 5,000 of you. This baby looks so good. One of the things that we never did do was put our badging back on the new trunk once we got the red one converted to blue. I wisely, back in the day, took pictures with a ruler so that I could get my measurements and know exactly where that was placed. The red car was a WRX, not an STi. And the only reference I have from the original was on the black deck lid that was mangled up. So no good measurements on there. I do have all of the logos with the 3M sticky tape on there, so they are cut and trimmed and ready to go on. I have used the measurements to put these at least on some tape, and now I'm going to go ahead and apply them in accordance with the measurements that I took. Double-sided tape on the back of there. I have spaced it all out according to the ruler, right up against the ruler in fact, and then I held it all in place with this tape. Again, I've already got this one taped and precisely positioned on here. And finally, I've got the STi badge all ready to go here. To this bottom point here on the eye, it would be 7 centimeters up and 6 centimeters over from the side. Oh, that's a beaut. Finally, she's an STi again. All right, one last step. She's for sale. And that is a wrap on the 5,000 sub video. Thank you for watching. Sorry this one was a little bit longer than normal, but we had a lot to get done on this car to get it back up to shape so that we can sell this thing and give her to the next lucky person that's going to get to enjoy the heck out of her. Almost 50,000 miles for us in the last 5 years or so, 6 plus probably, so that we've had it. So low mileage car and looking fantastic, and I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this car and hate to see her go, but it's time. We got other things to do in 2025. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for your loyalty and your love and support. Please remember to like and subscribe if you're not already, and we'll catch you again real soon. Take care.